Hello and welcome to Westminster on yet another day of the Labour Party Civil War saga, a day that may very well go down in history as the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer. Why? Because it seems like Andy Burnham, the prince waiting in the shadows, could be about to make a spectacular return to SW1. Now, how has this happened? Well, Andrew Gwynne is a long-serving Labour MP who has in the last few minutes just announced that he is resigning from the Commons and sparking a by-election in Greater Manchester, the part of the world represented by Andy Burnham, who we all know has wanted to make a return to Westminster for a very long time. Mr. Gwynne claims this is down to health reasons. He was suspended as a Labour MP about a year ago over participation in a WhatsApp group that contained some perceived offensive messages. And he has said that this has had an immense toll on his mental health and as a result is stepping down. Now, for what it's worth, Mr. Gwynne has always insisted that despite long-standing rumours that he may step down in order to facilitate Andy Burnham's return, that he is not part of some anti-Starmer plot. But it does seem very convenient, doesn't it? There now will be a by-election in which Mr. Burnham is widely expected to stand in order to come back to Parliament. That may not be so simple, however, because in order to stand, he needs approval by the Labour Party National Executive Committee, the NEC, which is stuffed full of Keir Starmer allies and the friends of his right-hand man in the shadows, Morgan McSweeney, who is undoubtedly at this very moment trying to work out how to win an election and possibly prevent Mr. Burnham standing as a Labour candidate. Now, the reasons why they might want this are obvious. Mr. Burnham is very popular, both with the wider public and with Labour MPs. He is unsullied by Labour's disastrous first 18 months in government and could bring a fresh bit of air to this failing government.
And on a matter at home, before we go on, do you support Andy Burnham standing in a by-election in Gorton and Denton, as many people think he does want to do?
Well, it's a very early stage, and the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party will set out the process in the usual way, as it always does for by-elections. Andy Burnham is doing an excellent job as Mayor of Manchester. We work very closely together. Last year we were responding together to the terrible attack on a synagogue in Manchester. More recently, we've been working together on the Northern Powerhouse rail, and I think Andy would acknowledge that working with this government has been much better than the experience he had of working with previous governments.
Thank you very much.
It would also mean that we're going to need a by-election for the Greater Manchester mayoralty because Mr. Burnham legally cannot do both jobs at the same time. On top of this, you've got the threat of reform, and the by-election, whoever stands for Labour, will be incredibly interesting. At the moment, pollsters think it may be a three-way split between Labour, Reform and the Green Party. So there's an enormous amount to play for, either with Mr. Burnham as the candidate or if he is not the candidate. Now, I would predict that despite Keir Starmer detesting the idea of Mr. Burnham returning to Westminster, he will have to allow it should Andy Burnham want to. Why? Because Labour MPs would be furious if Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney tried using their powers on the Labour NEC to block Mr. Burnham's return.
I think all governments have found that there's sometimes a sort of deep-seated departmental position that they think they've got to hold. And I personally, as having been a minister, I saw that. I saw it in opposition, and I still see it as mayor. You know, it's not justified, I don't think, for departments still to be resisting devolution. Devolution is the direction. Devolution is bringing growth, not just here, but in other city regions as well. So why are they allowed just to make us fight endlessly? You know, it's attritional. You know, we spend so much of our time making the case for devolution to the parts of the system that don't want it. And the answer, I'll finish on this point. See, for me, the word rewiring, you know, Rowena rightly asked for a definition. Rewiring relates to the flow of power, doesn't it? It relates to modernising systems so that the flow of power is better and in the right direction. And I would say, the unelected state Whitehall currently holds too much power. And indeed, in my experience of 16 years in Westminster, the whip system disempowers the elected state, because often MPs are required to rubber stamp the long-held departmental positions, and it's a brave minister that kind of unilaterally will go and try and change it. It can do, but it doesn't often happen. I personally believe the answer to this, to a more functional Britain, is a major reform of the elected state, Westminster, to mirror what's being done now in the local state out in the world that I'm in, which is about place-based, mission-oriented delivery, very much focused around growth. And for me, that means reform of the voting system to make it build a more collaborative, long-term culture within Westminster. I think it does mean reform of the whip system. I think it means replacement of the Lords with a Senate of the nations and regions, so that we are all pulling in the same direction as a country, as a place-based, mission-oriented system. We need to feel the national state at the back of the local state. In effect, what we find ourselves is fighting it all of the time in an attritional battle. So in the end, the rewiring is the empowerment of Westminster in a very different, in my view, political system. The one thing I would say, the conversation down there seems to be just how do you form Whitehall on its own? I think you've got to have Whitehall in the middle of Westminster. The elected state is either side of it. Westminster at the top end and devolved authorities like mine at the other end. Westminster has to sort of, if you like, have the ability to direct Whitehall more in a mission-oriented, place-based way, and then Whitehall required more to support authorities like mine to make the pace of change much quicker and to end this stalemate when we're often fighting for years about what I would say quite simple devolutionary asks.
Who knows? Maybe they'll try it and they'll cave in after a week or two anyway and burn through yet more of their dwindling political capital. That seems to be how they've been running government for the last 18 months. The move itself by Mr. Burnham has been greeted with something just shy of terror by the financial markets, which have been all over the place, especially given that Andy Burnham has repeatedly criticised Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer for being in hock to the financial markets, and the big money in the City of London is not doing enough to stand up for ordinary working people. What does that mean? Well, that's a coded demand for more borrowing and more spending. By the way, that's more borrowing of the financial markets money and the bankers, which is exactly why they don't want Mr. Burnham in power. So it's going to be a dramatic few weeks. It's already been a very dramatic day. Keir Starmer yet to speak on this candidly. Andy Burnham yet to put his name forward. But here in Westminster, it seems that events are moving at a very fast pace.